Всем добрый день или уже добрый вечер. Меня зовут Анастасия Еремина, и я старший антрополог КБ «Стрелка». По совместительству я координатор фестиваля восстановления исторической среды Том Сойер Фест в своем родном городе Сергиев Посад.
Of historic environment in my hometown of Sergiev Posad. And today, in the framework of the online urban practices, we're going to be talking about the project that have been initiated by citizens. Of course, gentrification and similar processes promote the situations when buildings or sites lose their history or become unavailable to local communities. Bottom-up initiatives, on the other hand, sometimes might work in a particular place, region, area, or for specific objects. They define the value of the site, imbue it with new functions so that the site is returned to the city and the citizens. So the speakers today will be talking about these kinds of projects in the city of Yekaterinburg, the city of Kazan, and Berlin. And of course, our experts will also tell about how to make our urban spaces more fair, more sustainable, and more accessible to all of the citizens, while preserving local identity of the place. Today, in our discussion, we have Leona Lynen, the partner of Haus der Statistik project in Berlin. Polina Ivanova, over there, the director of the architecture group. The art group is called Co-Conspirators. And we have also the representative Kirill Mayevsky from Kazan. If you want to share today's event, use our hashtags ArchitectsRF and Urban Practices. And of course, do not hesitate to leave your questions in the chat of the broadcast. We'll discuss them during the dialogue or after the conversation. Leona, your project was devised and exists thanks to a group effort of civic activists. Tell about what is Haus der Statistik and Zusammenkunft, if I pronounce that correctly, and about the community that you have been able to build together around those projects.
Thank you, Anastasia. I'm very happy to be here, although it's only digitally tonight. I brought a few slides which I'll show, and I just translated them into Russian. If there is mistakes, please excuse, but I hope you can follow. Haus der Statistik is a model project for cooperative urban development. It sits right in the center of Berlin. On the left of the image, you see Berlin Alexanderplatz, which a few of you might know. And Haus der Statistik was the former National Office of Statistics during the German Democratic Republic. But since German reunification in 1989, or after German reunification in 1989, administration users moved in. In 2008, they moved out. And since then, the entire site, which is 50,000 square meters large, sits empty. There were plans to regenerate Alexanderplatz, plans to tear down the building, but nothing happened due to many reasons, until a group of artists in 2015 hung up a poster on the facade of the building and claimed, here in the center of Berlin, places for art, culture, and social uses will be constructed. And what looked like an official building poster was actually an artistic stunt to bring back the public attention on this site that right in the center of Berlin had been empty since 7 years. And also because due to rising real estate prices in Berlin, artists and more vulnerable groups of people had been pushed out of the city center, had been pushed out to the fringes of the city. And basically everything that Berlin stands for, all these creative users, artists, but also people that take care of everyday normal people through educational or social uses, they had been pushed out, and thereby Berlin city center had become more and more banal. What was quite a simple artistic stunt actually brought back public attention to the project. People actually called this number that was there, were asking whether they could rent a space in the building, and the press conference afterwards led to the mayor of the district that Haus der Statistik is placed in led to his support, because he was also aware that it was quite a challenge for the city that there was such a lack of affordable spaces. Quickly after the statistic stunt, an initiative formed, Initiative Haus der Statistik, that developed a usage concept for the entire site, feasibility studies, and for over 2 years lobbied on a political level. They housed big open network meetings where everyday people just came and started to join a discussion and co-develop together a future vision of what Haus der Statistik could be used for. In 2017, a major milestone was reached. The initiative convinced Berlin, the city, to buy back Haus der Statistik. Before, it was in federal ownership and they wanted to sell it off to the highest bidder. But Berlin was convinced that Haus der Statistik should be remunicipalized, and thereby the foundation was laid for the development for the common good. Since 2018, the beginning of 2018, a new constellation of actors is working together, which is very unique. It's 5 partners from both administration, politics, 2 city-owned housing companies, housing and real estate companies, and us at Zusammenkunft Berlin, which is a cooperative that was formed from the Initiative Haus der Statistik. And this is very unique because the project was started as a civic affair, but then also Berlin had own interest to use the building for administration uses. And instead of playing out the 2 concepts against each other, we decided to join forces, join hands, and share responsibility for the overall development of the site. What will happen with Haus der Statistik is that the existing structures will be kept, although they look very derelict as they are, and they will be added on by another 65,000 square meter of new development, a new town hall for the local district, 25,000 square meters affordable housing, and 15,000 square meters for art, culture, social affairs, education, namely the program of Initiative Haus der Statistik. We believe that cooperation is the lever for the success, the so far success of the project. And although we're very different, we all do bring different talents to the table, and I think we create very great synergies. Although it's not always easy on a day-to-day business. This graph is quite complex, and I'm not going to take up the rest of my probably 3 to 4 minutes to explain it. But it just shows you how complex the whole process is and how we do things differently at Haus der Statistik. This is the urban design competition that we launched in the fall of 2018. And it shows you that we connected both overall project management with the planning of the participating planning offices and official participation by interested citizens. And we had, with the beginning of the urban design competition, we also opened up an on-site office which sits just next to the building. It was also a derelict, unused former bicycle store. And in this Werkstatt Haus der Statistik, we run several formats of involvement, which for us is very important, that we do not only do very normal forms of participation where people are just asked whether they want to have the facade in light gray or darker gray, but actually everyday people, neighbors, students, kids from the neighborhood come together and create a shared vision of what the house should be and how the places should be designed. So we build models together with young adults and kids. We do ping pong matches and thereby get people engaged in the project and start to have a discussion and basically lower the threshold for people to get engaged in the project. The result of the urban design competition is this urban design scheme. In dark red, you see the proposed affordable housing. Light red is the housing program from Initiative Haus der Statistik, which is assistant and inclusive housing. In green, you see the spaces both in the existing and in the new structure, which are dedicated to art, culture, education. Dark blue is the new tax office that will go into the existing building. And in light blue, in the top left corner, you see the new town hall that we built. That will be built. It will be a 90-meter skyscraper. Where we are now is in between we're currently setting up a land use plan for the building. And at the same time, we thought we should start where we are. The whole building is being gutted. All the non-supportive structures are being taken out. And we thought it would be great to not have the building stand empty for longer. So we convinced our partners to open up all the ground floors during the upcoming planning and building process, and start to bring in pioneer users. And through this, we're not only reacting to the long vacancy of the building, but also the really high pressure on affordable spaces and the huge interest and need that are already existing today in the city from people with backgrounds in art, culture, education, social users, and so on. The users and users are quite diverse. We have everything from summer schools that come in and open up the workshop. We have theater plays. We have social initiatives that cook with elderly women and elderly neighbors. We have dancing classes that take part. We have a beekeeper. We have language classes. And I think the diversity of users is really showing the potential of such a space. And it also, through these pioneer users, we're not only testing in small what will happen in the house in the future, but we're also testing out organizational models. So how do we actually choose transparently and in a fair way who can use the spaces in the future? How does self-organization of people work? How does sharing of spaces work? And for this, the pioneer users are for us a huge learning opportunity. And also today, our partners realize that and are very supportive of the pioneer users that are on site. We have over 150 applications, a huge, I think 250 by now, 150 people actively, 150 different groups actively using the house as we speak. And for us, for everyone, it's a great learning journey. And we're now currently developing a plan how to actually transport the pioneer users in the future quarter, because they're not interim users. They should not fall victim to their own success and be driven out by gentrification. But we actually want these people to also be the future users in the new building. I think in short, what Haus der Statistik stands for is quite aptly being told by an art installation that we can see on the top of one of the buildings. It's in German, it reads Alles Andersplatz, which sounds a bit like a drunken version of Alexanderplatz, the big square that is just across the street. But I think what it all boils down to is the Alles Andersplatz is translated into the everything different square. And I think to us, it's key that regeneration and urban development requires otherness. It requires that you join forces with people that you might not necessarily talk to, that you have that have different backgrounds to you than you, but they also bring in different talents and perspectives to the table. And I think this is what we need in order to create open and diverse cities. Thank you very much. This was just a very short and brief insight into Haus der Statistik. We also do have a website. It is in German, but there is fantastic translation tools. And we also have 2 brochures about the project that are available in English. If you're interested, do send me an email. And now I'm happy to hear the other presentations and looking forward to the discussion and your questions. Thank you very much.
Leona, спасибо большое.
Leona, thank you so much. I believe that we will discuss every project in more detail after all of the presentations are made. But now I will switch to Kirill. Kirill, as far as I know, his bureau Smena is well known not only in Kazan. I believe that his project is widely visible in Russia. It's been implemented without any significant investment from corporate sector or government. So, tell us about Smena, Kirill, how the project began, how it changed during the last 7 years. Can you see my presentation? Good day, good evening. Thank you for the invitation to participate in the discussion. Indeed, Smena began, the project Smena started in 2012-13. It is a project without any sustainable governmental or commercial support. It became sort of as a charity project. We got help from one of the significant art collectors of the city of Kazan to open the space. He literally invested money into the works of refurbishment and renovation. He invested only 1 million rubles, about $15,000. Not so much money, even in 2013. Ever since, Smena has been growing as a volunteer-based project. It has been putting together people who were mostly excited about all kinds of different activities that we have been doing. And people were coming together with the intention to bring something new on the table. Today, Smena, on the one hand, is a space, but also it is a group of people, a team that hosts in Smena and outside of Smena many projects. We even have our publishing house, our small publishing program. But fundamentally, Smena is a building of 3 stories. On the first floor, we have a bookstore, Smena bookstore.
Что-то между магазином Фаланстер и магазином Музея современного.
Kind of something similar to the bookstore in the Museum of Contemporary Art. I believe it's close to Walter Koenig Museum. Museum shop. I believe you know the format. So we sell books about visual arts, literature, children's books, less of the fiction, but lately we have been selling more fiction. Lots of humanitarian-related books. Also on the first floor, we have a small record store called The Shining. It's a well-known record label, actually, in Russia. So here's a bookstore again. Also, on the first floor, we have just finished the refurbishment of the showroom of the concept store called Platforma. That's a kind of a clothing shop, a small boutique that will represent the works of contemporary Russian fashion designers. Also, what's important in Smena is the second floor. There are 2 vast spaces on the second floor. This is space number 1, our lecture hall. Smena is in the building that was built in the beginning of the 20th century. Initially, that was sort of a building for stables, and they just stored hay for horses on the second floor. Then it was some kind of a military warehouse. In the 90s, the building was derelict and empty. In the beginning of the 21st century, there was a car wash on the first store, and by 2013, we launched the thing, and we've been neighboring with the car wash for a year and a half. So on the first floor, people were driving in, they were fixing tires, washing cars, and on the second floor, we were hosting public talks, panel discussions, exhibitions, and lots of other cool stuff. So that was kind of a endless coexistence of 2 different worlds. Our neighbors on the first floor were making lots of noises, fixing cars, checking sound systems of expensive cars. And we really knew like the regular clients who came there with their loud cars, depending, of course, on the soundtrack. So 4.5 years ago, the owner of the space, because again, Smena is the project without any private or public support. All of the spaces that we use, they are, we rent them on a monthly basis, by the way. We only pay for rent. We earn and try to compensate our costs. We sell tickets for events. We rent the space that we rent. We offer the space for rent while we rent it. So about 4 years ago, the owner of the building began refurbishing the entire space. The car wash went away. Finally, the owner realized the potential of what we have been doing. We moved to the first floor 3.5 years ago, by the way. The photos that I've shown you, those are photos of the recent year. But to come back to the activities that we've been doing on the second floor, lectures, since day one, we've been investing a lot of effort into the educational program. Not necessarily art, by the way, not necessarily liberal arts. We have a patent program about fiction, about science fiction, sciences, physics, chemistry, math, all kinds of applied sciences. Also, we host live concerts and shows. We specialize in contemporary, academic and classical music, jazz music, musical improvisations. We have musical guests from Russia and from all over the world. Also, on an annual basis, we host different kinds of professional programs for different communities, such as a publishing school for young publishers or music schools, music making schools, the poster design, series of workshops of poster design in cooperation with Pro Helvetia. Lots of professional programs. Of course, movie screenings. And the second thing that we have been doing, something that began Smena overall, our exhibition space. This is where we try to host 6 to 7 exhibitions on an annual basis, different kinds of exhibitions, ready-made projects that we sometimes bring to Kazan. Also, some of the projects, of course, we initiate ourselves. We curate projects. Some of the projects are a result of different kinds of art residences that we host in Smena. This is our gallery hall, exhibition hall. This is the exhibition together with the Triumph Gallery, a very significant gallery in the center of Moscow, the best commercial gallery in Moscow. This is the result of the art residency of the Swiss artists François and Daniel Cartier. Probably colleagues from Yekaterinburg know them. They have been participating in the last Yekaterinburg Ural Biennale of Contemporary Art. This is kind of a clean hall. But that's an exhibition, by the way. This is the exhibition of one of the founders of Smena, the guy named Gilzar Hasanov. If you have ever visited the first Triennale of the Museum of Contemporary Art Garage in Moscow, you've probably seen this installation, The Male and Female Red. And thanks to the initiatives of this particular artist, we have been able to actually make a lot of great things. And this is our courtyard just after they have removed the car wash. You see the entrances. Those are the entrances for the car wash. Now there's a bookstore today. This is something that we hosted last year, a small festival. This is our publishing program. The idea of the program is put together the local context with the more broad contemporary context. We, of course, pay lots of attention to local region, to the history of the region. Our publishing program is meant to put together the knowledge of local history, local lore, local folk, knowledge of the city, and put it together with contemporary art. We publish books about the mythology of the Tatar of Kazan. Tatar are the dominant ethnic group in Kazan. We invite contemporary artists to be illustrators for the books. This is a very brief intro into what we do. I see I have 1 minute and a half left. Let me tell about what we do outside of the building. 2 events that we have been hosting every year, and we're not hosting it this year due to the circumstances that you are aware of. This is a large-scale book festival, a quintessential thing of what we do in Smena. The festival is hosted in a park called the Black Lake. It is a fair. That is the epitome of what we do. We invite large-scale network chain bookshops, minor bookshops, so that the public in Kazan could meet with those people who know about the books, meaning publishers. This is a large-scale, international, educational program. You see, this is the director, famous Russian director, international director named Timur Bekmambetov. We invite also John Simbruk, Alexander Pshera, and many other significant authors that we invited. Their books have been published in Russia or are about to be published in Russia. So, another part of the festival is, of course, a large family program, children's program. And the fourth pillar is a kind of a more generalistic cultural program that we host: shows, concerts, lectures, live performances, tours. My time is almost up, but I will briefly mention also one more festival, the festival called Rudnik, literally translated as The Mine. It's a documentary film festival together with the director Maria Razbeshkina, a very famous Russian documentary director, on a small island 60 kilometers away from Kazan. Without going into too much detail, let me tell you that this is a small island, 1.5 kilometers per 1.5 kilometers, an idyllic place. And we host there without any film infrastructure. We host there our festival, and directors, young people, young directors up till 35 years old from all over the world come here. We also host their School of Documentary Filmmaking. So in 2 weeks, people actually build their first documentary. There's also School of Documentary Animation there. So it's pretty intense. 10 days, which are very intense. Kind of a boot camp festival of documentary filmmaking. This is the island of Sviazhsk. Lots of religious building there. This is our film hall there. This is our team. A relatively small team, but 7 or 8 people are the basis of our team. On a daily basis, they work kind of the hardcore team. But still, we have more colleagues. Colleagues from Yekaterinburg. See this dude sitting down there. This is the guy named Dima Bezuglov. He actually is a strong activist of the Ural Biennale of Contemporary Art in Yekaterinburg. But he is a significant member of our team. Some of the guys work in different places. I work in a different publishing house. Some guys are journalists. Some guys are working in charity funds. So, and it all kind of intertwines with Smena. But current economic turbulence is, of course, is making us look for different forms of earning money while actually putting our ambitions to reality. Thank you. Kirill, thank you so much. Let me hand the floor to Polina. She is the director of the art group called Co-Conspirators. They have initiated the project called The White Tower. This is the monument of architecture of constructivism. Polina, tell about the project, this project in Yekaterinburg, and how the project overall influenced the city, if at all, and the local community, of course. Good day, everybody. Good evening. My name is Polina, and I am in charge of the White Tower project, indeed, and I hope that you can see my presentation. Can you see my presentation? Yes, we can. Couple of things I want to tell about the White Tower itself. That is the water tower of the Uralmash factory. So in the 30s, there's been social city for the huge Uralmash industrial complex. And of course, it should have had water supplied there. So this is the water supply tower. And it's in the end. It's in the end of one of the streets. It's very symbolic. The tower is situated kind of in the zenith, in the end of the street. So, an important idea for us is when the tower was initially designed, it was not just a feat of engineering to store water. The architect in the 30s actually was very kind of dreamy. He wanted to put together industrial architecture with something else. So there were public spaces in the tower designed initially, like the observation tower. And on the first floor, there are a few public spaces. Even the bus stop there is. But when they launched the tower to work, of course, it became a closed object with limited access, of course, because it had regional significance. It had to be secured. So for many years, those who lived in the Uralmash industrial town could only see it from the outside because, of course, that was a strategic object that had to be secured. Next, of course, we have to look at the Uralmash. In the 90s, the Uralmash industrial complex went through significant hardships. And the factory just abandoned the tower, and the tower became no man's property. People were coming there, drawing graffitis, doing stuff there. One of the representatives of the community even made the tattoo of the tower, you see there. But actually, the community around the tower mostly looked like this. When we were in charge of the project and studying social networks, we found 1 billion of such photos from the end of 90s and the beginning of the O's, so that lots and lots of people learned about actually have kind of made their interventions before we did it. But still, it's the monument of constructivism. It is a tremendous monument of constructivism. Russian experts, foreign experts adored the building, even though it was really derelict. Everybody wanted to look at the building and tell about the building. Another community, of course, around the tower are people who are very much interested in industrial alpine climbing, industrial tourism. I mean, the project was always a landmark. And let me explain. The situation in the city of Yekaterinburg was quite specific. So everybody knows about the tower in the city. It is symbolic. It is on posters, on coffee cups, on refrigerator magnets. But literally, it was abandoned, derelict. It was literally a toilet. Everybody knew about the building, but nobody went there. It was not a tourist landmark. So this is our team. And we faced the challenge ever since 2012. We're a civic organization. And we have this tower to use it for free and without any time limitation. So this tower is a public property, but we are allowed to use it as a civic organization. We are architects, and we wanted to preserve it. We realized that on the one hand, there are tons and tons of people who kind of believe that they own the tower. If we just kind of close the tower and fence it off, everybody will see us as invaders. Nobody will like it. But it is impossible to preserve the building or even fix the building without partially closing it. And the mission was tremendous. We needed to build first the community. We had these so-called subotniks, the Saturday cleaning day, when people go on Saturday, come together and just clean the territory in the building. So you see the piles of trash and garbage that we, together with volunteers, put out of the building. We had a few of this kind of a large civic events when people were coming together. Several dozens of people were coming and cleaning the building together with us. Even more people that we could actually accept. Literally, it is impossible to house more than 40 people within the tower, so we had 40 people who were cleaning it. And at one of the cleaning sessions, when we were putting the temporary fence, we gave a key to every volunteer to the fence. That was a very symbolic act to build the community, because we wanted to show that if you kind of invest yourself into the building, and even if we don't know you, now you have the key. You can come here every day. To be fair, I have to say that in a few days they cut a hole in the fence, so whatever. We had the community anyway. The second thing was we needed to do something with the graffiti, with lots of graffiti. That was a lot of effort. We wanted to find people who were making the graffiti. We were talking to the graffiti community. We were asking questions from artists which graffiti actually represent the value. And if the authors of the graffiti would allow us to paint over graffiti or do something with those graffitis. So we preserved parts of the graffitis. We painted the tower in white outside without any strong rejections from the graffiti community. Everybody knows well that if we just paint over the graffiti, if you paint over one graffiti, they will be two instead. But we talked to the street art community so that now the graffiti stands as white as it can be for many years. Nobody paints over it. This is the first floor as it looks now. We have preserved some of the wall graffitis, but we also have their information centers that where you can register for guided tours. Every week before the quarantine, we had excursions and tours. We also had on-demand excursions. In addition, we had different kinds of events in the tower. For example, we've always been open for any many initiatives. We are not artists. We are not organizers. We're not hosts. We are architects. We are in charge of the preservations. But we provide tower as the venue for different kinds of events. This tower is very special in terms of space. The spaces are small. They are unusual in terms of acoustics. It's hard to do something there. This is actually where the water was stored. This is kind of the container for water, and we have kind of a unofficial competition of who would invent the most unusual thing to do within the container. And this is the view from the White Tower. You see, this is the road around Yekaterinburg, and the forest begins and just stretches till the next town in the region. And it's important that the building is not in the center of the city. So for this particular area of the city, this is a community building spot. We must interact with people. We must invite them. And that's what we do. This is pretty much all of my presentation. Polina, thank you so much. Let's continue with the discussion. Let's talk about the bottom-up initiatives and what kind of experience we can use based on your practices in different cities, in different countries. And let me ask maybe the fundamental question. And Polina actually talked about this already. It's about building the community. In different cases, we see that we must not only engage community of people to participate, but also we must create our own initiatives. As far as I understand, in different projects, people come and just do stuff. This helps to maintain sustainability of this urban clusters. I would like to ask Kirill first. How did you engage people into Smena? Does it work? Does it play any significant role? As a matter of fact, I will say something very anxious right now. Horrific. Community building has not been that significant for us. I mean, it's not been first and foremost. We have not been kind of splitting our audience into different groups or different communities that we should be working with. We are, let me tell you, we're pretty selfish as an institution, and we have been doing what we love. It's a volunteer project, after all. So we have been trying to work less with the request of the community. We'd prefer to pile up opportunities on the community. So it's been a kind of a different trajectory, not responding to the community and its needs, but kind of offering lots and lots of variety to the community. So we've been providing all kinds of varieties into the program of our center, offering it to the community. Of course, we've built connections and ties with different kinds of professional communities, and we've been putting together different kinds of programs with them. And that is the source of our schools, professional schools that I have mentioned. And we are actually proud of those schools, and we satisfy with those schools the interest of so many people who are in the orbit of Smena as an audience, as a target group. But I would like to say once more that one of our key missions is to less satisfy the interest of people, but rather provoke the interest in people by hosting the oddest, the weirdest, and the most unexpected projects. So kind of a different, other direction, but still works. I mean, we do not reject community. Please do not misunderstand me. We have just kind of a upside down thinking here. We're trying to think about, we try to devise community as a result of a future event that we're designing today. So, for example, we see things that we have been happening 50 years ago. Oh, it's not, I mean, it's not perception, it's kind of a preception, something that will happen in 10 years after what we do today. So the community will be as a result of a series of events, the assemblage of events that we will be hosting, for example, in 2021. But we're devising it today. As far as I understand, you have the representatives of different groups of citizens, and you are kind of a center that puts them all together, right? Sort of. Another important question.
Про то, каким образом подобрать программы, то есть вообще вот про событийное программирование. Мне кажется, этот вопрос...
A question about how you create programs of events, so that, for example, they are helping the redevelopment of the old space or new space. What is the way to actually select the best events, different kinds of events, the best functions that are appropriate for a particular space? The question was initially to Smena, but Leona, what do you think about it? How did you define what the space should be, what suits, what fits to the space?
Well, I think what is crucial about Haus der Statistik is the similarity that I saw also in Polina's presentation, is that it's actually a common and shared vision of a lot of people that initially were engaged to these open network meetings and today are basically translated into the pioneer users. And so in the pioneer users that also do quite a lot of the program that is currently happening at Haus der Statistik, there's a huge variety of people represented. And they come up with a program that we could not even imagine because we only represent a small group of people. And we have great ideas, but there's people out there who have even greater ideas. And I think one good example is a choir that was founded at Haus der Statistik. And it was initially founded as part of an art project. And I was thinking, okay, well, great, it's fun to have a choir, but actually this project is about urban development. But through the choir, a lot of people came to the house because they were initially interested in singing. And while being there, they realized this project is actually about something much bigger. And so the choir was for them the entry point into the project. And now through the choir, we have lots of people who join also the formats of involvement, the formats of participation, and have now a say into the future of the house. And I think this is a beautiful example of how different people need to come together and create formats and program together in order to really represent and reflect the diversity of people that we have in a city, and that all should have a say in what the future of the city should look like. So I think partly how to create a program is bring in different people, give people the space and allow for ideas to be reflected in the space, and also be a bit daring and try not to be a control freak, because other people might have great ideas that you might not come up with yourself.
То есть функциональное зонирование, которое...
So kind of a functional zoning that you have shown on one of the images, that was based on the meetings with the citizens, based on their ideas, or this housing, affordable housing, that was more of your initiative, your vision.
No, the overall ideas of the citizens is mainly reflected in the program of
Идеи
Initiative Haus der
горожан во
Statistik.
многом отражаются
So
в
all
наших
the green
инициативах в целом.
spaces.
Все зеленые пространства,
Now I'm
это
hearing
как
the
раз...
Russian translation.
I'm so sorry.
No worries. So this is mainly reflected in the green parts that I showed on the graph. But the ideas of the citizens are now reflected in the pioneer uses that are on all the ground floors. So it's about 4,000 square meters that are currently being used for everything from art installation to theater plays, to the choir, to cooking lessons, to educational formal language classes, and so on. And these will be translated into the new build as well. And we are continuously holding formats of involvement where people can bring in their ideas. And they will also be translated into the town hall, for example. But of course, the spaces for administration have only a limited say, because the tax office has certain requirements. And even though people say it would be great to have the entire 110 square meters for social uses, this is simply some restrictions that we have to adhere to, that also Berlin as administration has a need for spaces. And after all, we as citizens benefit from it, because it will be a town hall. We need to do our taxes, so these people need to work from somewhere. And even though we don't like to do our taxes, I think this is nonetheless a civic use. And this is also something that I'd like to state as an answer to both Kirill and Polina, is also our entire site is not private. It's owned by the city of Berlin. All the spaces will be rented. Also the housing, it's affordable housing for €6.50 per square meter, which is very much affordable in Berlin, and a huge challenge to realize that given the current prices. And some of the places will be given out as a so-called hereditary leasehold to groups of people. And thereby a situation is being created where speculation on land and building is prevented for a long time. And this is basically our core goal, to pull off this building off the market for speculation.
Здорово, спасибо. Вот если кратко, Кирилл, Полина, могли бы тоже...
Kirill, Polina, briefly, what do you think about this event-based planning? Kind of a functional fulfillment of the areas. I believe there's a difference between our projects. Let me explain. We are architects, you guys. Our mission is to preserve the building. This is what we care about. We work with space, we work with the walls. We love it. We are not that much excited about the programming. We want people in the building, but we do not want to answer the question why they come there. Of course, we talk to the community. We discuss with the community, asking them what the community wants to do there. We are open to suggestions. I believe that Smena is a different thing. They have the vision, they have sort of the community, or they do this perception of the community, but that's the difference between them and us. So it's a venue, the White Tower... is a place where people come and use it somehow. Yes, it's not that we do not have policies. Of course, we have policies. But overall, it was important to us to kind of to hear and to listen. We were open to suggestions. We came without agenda. Our agenda was preservation of the building. Then we asked a question, how to preserve the building and what to do to preserve it. So that the residents kind of participated, yeah, and somehow continued to preserve the building hand in hand with you. Yeah, so that you are not alone. You're just 6 people or something. I see. Kirill, briefly, your vision about this. Well, we have sort of a vision, of course. In many ways, it's related to the interests of the participants of our team. And at a certain point, we kind of enhance certain things, or we've been winding down certain things. But lately, we had a pretty clear, rather conventional program for a contemporary culture institution. We've not been inventing something very original, maybe only in the frameworks of professional programs. But during the quarantine, we have launched, and again, this is something that we care a lot, by the way, we launched the small media. We call this the Echo of Smena. Not the echo, but more of a kind of the megaphone, the speaking trumpet, the horn of Smena. We have been printing the thing before, but we decided to make it online, kind of the online magazine, the horn, the trumpet of Smena. We've been doing it really remotely in Ready Mug, as our we did it quick and dirty, following our heart. So this is our online magazine, and we will use the magazine to publish our program, to talk about the events that have been happening, or we'll publish something auxiliary to our exhibitions, our events. So kind of the leftovers of what we have been doing, something that could not be expressed within the building will go into this online medium that we have been doing. And this online magazine will accumulate these small texts, small reels that would not be as pretentious as a long read or narrative. In addition, this medium will also kind of enhance our program, kind of the inversion of our program, a program within a program. Because the events that we host, they need some preparation in addition to announcement of the event. So we need to provide a context. It's hard to create this context in Kazan using only our social networks, but the press, the media in Kazan are paying less and less attention to supporting our context. That's why we decided that we need a medium. Let's make the context of our own. And let's use our medium to tell about our projects. Let's tell about them in more detail. Let's highlight the things that we care about. And so on and so forth. So we believe that it's not even about constructing a nice program. Of course, the elements are universal for construction. It's more about stitching different events together and unpacking our entire program for the breadth of our audience. And the audience understands that this is connecting with that and that is connected to this. It's not out of blue. We see some coherence in this ecosystem. And the audience understands that, wow, it's an entire philosophy. Yeah, some might say, but without philosophy. Just a system. Cultural system. Yeah. And Kirill, I believe you have just mentioned a pain point about financial support, about searching for budget for bottom-up initiatives and projects. Where can we find financing? How have you been looking financing? Question to everybody. How have you been looking financing? How can you get sustainable financial support so that you would not be constantly searching for money? Because of course, sustainable financial support is the cornerstone of sustainability of the project in general. We often see these problems when you need to make a project, but you also need to look money, and there's no time for sleep. So, how are you doing this, Leona? Tell us, how do you get the money for the project?
Well, I think what is important to understand that also Haus der Statistik was driven by, and until today is still driven by, a lot of voluntary work. And this is so because a self-initiated project, there is never someone who pays you. And I think this is both the good and the bad thing about it, because if you don't have someone who pays you, you also have all the freedom to do what you want. But at the same time, it obviously requires quite a lot of cultural capital by the people who are engaged. Or just a lot of people. And I think this was the case in Haus der Statistik. There were a lot of people who were willing to put in voluntary work, who were willing to do these feasibility studies and organize meetings in their free time. And until the end of 2018, so until the beginning of the urban planning procedure, we had zero money that we were being paid for the project. So over 4 years, 3.5 years, without being paid a cent. And with the beginning of the urban design competition, we were paid by our 4 partners for parts of our work, namely running the space, Werkstatt Haus der Statistik, organizing these formats of involvement, and some of the communication that we do, so sending out a newsletter and running the website. But we were not being paid for the actual project development that we were doing, because it's not very easy for official partners such as administration and politics to pay a civic initiative for the work that they do. So they need to make a public tender every time they need something. And this is also something that was important to us. Like, we want to create models, financial models that are transportable to other projects. So we don't want solutions through the back door that are just suitable for our case, but they should also work for other projects in Berlin and elsewhere. And until last week, we actually reached a major milestone with the Senate Department for Urban Development, which is one of our partners. They found an organizational and financial way so that they can pay us for the project development for the program Art, Culture and Education, which is actually started just this morning, started today, which is a very complicated German term. It's called Bedarfsträgermodell. It's different to describe it in a minute that is left. But basically what it says is they teamed up. They said Berlin has the need for spaces for art, culture and education. So they can now argue within the parliament that Berlin needs to put money into the realization of this project. And we are now becoming the user that will tell them what is being needed within the house so that these users can be built in the future. It's sort of a very short version of how this model works. If people are interested in how it works, but probably it's a very German-specific case. But anyway, we are super happy because this is now a model that not only works for our case, but also works for other initiatives elsewhere. And nonetheless, I do think that these initiatives always need a lot of involvement and engagement by people, because this is, just as Polina said, through these subotniks, this is how the energy and momentum is being created. This is how community is being created. And if there's money from the very beginning, it's just a very different thing. There's less enthusiasm, I believe. And it's also, it just creates a different atmosphere. Nonetheless, one should be aware that being able to invest a lot of time also excludes a lot of people who are, for example, single parents or who just don't have that much time because they need to invest their time in other jobs that give them money. So this is something that one needs to be aware of and not over-romanticize civic engagement.
Congratulations, by the way. How many years again have you been waiting for the financial sustainable support?
Well, now almost 5 years.
Ориентир.
Then that's a benchmark for all of us. In 5 years, things will be fine.
Какая-то поддержка.
We'll get money. We'll get financial support. Another question in the chat. Let me ask it to Leona, as long as we've been talking to you, about commercial projects. So if the citizens come, volunteers, and they want to launch the projects of their own. So they get the space, or they rent the space, or there's competition to rent the space, or a competition to get the space for free. So what's the business model? Do you earn on the leasing space? Tell about this.
So we take €3 per square meter, which basically covers all the bills and covers a base money that finances one of my colleagues who's in charge of organizing all the Pioneer users. So she checks all the emails, she does all the initial contacts with them, and also manages the community of Pioneer users, which is quite a lot of work because there's a lot of people, as I said. So we're not making any profit, as to say, but all the money that gets in the project through the Pioneer users is being distributed into the program again. We have some rules for the Pioneer users so that not everyone can come. Basically, these rules exclude hyper-commercial users because we do get a lot of requests from big brands who want to have a fancy showroom or who want to have whatever program that we don't think is suitable for Haus der Statistik. We also set up, I didn't show the slide because it would have extended a bit much. We set up a committee that chooses the project. So it's not us that just says, well, everyone who is our friend can come and use the space, but we have set up an external committee made up of our partners and also people representatives of art, culture, education, climate, and the environment. And they choose who is actually able to get the space. And the agenda that we have is that we should always find a mix and a big diversity of the groups. So we have very small initiatives, unorganized initiatives, and big partners such as big theaters who come in and invest a lump sum, because we should not forget that all these spaces stood empty for over 11 years. There was no electricity, no running water, no toilets, no fire safety, nothing. So we always look for big partners who come with a lump sum, some money, and then thereby they allow for smaller groups to come in.
Здорово. Интересная система. Спасибо.
Very interesting system. Thank you. Kirill, tell about your side of things. I think the sponsor give you 1 million rubles, as you said. Did sponsor continue giving any money, or it's more of an interesting story there? Yeah, there's this guy, Ilgiz Arhasanov, the Kazan artist, and there's this collector, the collector who was collecting his works, and that collector, at a certain point, suggested Ilgizar, the artist, to host the exhibition in Moscow, in Winzavod complex, and print a huge catalog. So the artist said he doesn't want exhibition in St. Petersburg and Moscow. He doesn't want a catalog. Instead, he suggested investing into his dream, and the dream of many artists in Kazan, which is opening the significant gallery of contemporary art in Kazan. So the collector invested into that, and investor said, that's it. 1 million, that's it. He was not going to operationally sustain whatever we devise. So ever since then, on our own, we are trying to get along, acquire some sort of financial sustainability. We've been able to acquire it because on a monthly basis we have more and more costs, but we are trying to at least to have our costs more or less stable, so we can calculate the budget and decide what we can do to cover the costs. So we know how many tickets we should send, how many hours should the exhibition be open, how many events we should host, for how many hours we should lease our property. We also get grants, we host big commercial events. That's a nice bonus that helps us to broaden and enhance our programs. On the other hand, this helps us to implement certain ambitions of the team because we want to make better things year after year, more exciting, more interesting. And in those circumstances, financial sustainability is a wishful dream. We are not in financial sustainability. We are in financial turbulence. And either things are super good, then they're super hard. But within 6.5 years, we've been able to kind of generate certain way of life, way of existence with this sinusoid graph. We have learned to save, to accumulate, to cover costs. We have certain seasonality, and we know that seasonality. We sometimes have zero on our accounts, and we use very common economic tools to kind of plateau our financial condition. Because we are on our own. We are self-sustainable, literally. So we are as good as we work. Our space is as good as we work. And we have to capitalize on that. We have to capitalize on our skills, our activities, our ideas. It's hard life. Especially we have boundless ambitions of what we want to do, but still. But we have so many partners. We have been able to build kind of the base, the circle of so many partners who help us a lot. Like what? Like what kind of partners? Like the Ministry of Culture of the Republic of Tatarstan, the mayor of Kazan. They help us to host all of our most significant events. Garage Contemporary Art Museum. They provide us grants ever since 2018. The Triumph Gallery. They help us host exhibition. The European University in St. Petersburg, different educational grants. Even Strelka Institute in Moscow, which is hosting this thing, because we have often been inviting Strelka to host events in our venue. Maybe there are small commercial companies, small businesses, or different businesses that help you. Like, would you open the shop for construction goods, and then you could use those construction materials and construction goods to fix your building? No, that's a very odd ethos. A huge, cool construction company will open a store in your building, giving you 1,000 of nails and another 100 pieces of wood. That's just imagination. But if we want to buy plywood, we just either find a sponsor or request plywood. But all of this is a living process. This is a dynamic process. And it's hard to make it a framework. It's hard to make it a framework besides of some general ideas that I have expressed earlier.
Ну да, согласна. Насчет строительных магазинов, кстати, это работает в Том Сойере.
If we speak about Tom Sawyer, this is a project that I am doing in my hometown. We invited construction companies and construction goods stores They rent spaces and they provide us construction materials for refurbishing. Also, there are federal sponsors, the government, which can provide. Tom Sawyer is a giant festival with many branches. You even hosted the event in Kazan. Yes, and the mayor of the city supports it. Yeah, that is an ecosystem which has a significant charity part, because Smena is more of an educational, cultural thing.
Полина,
how are you doing with money? Our money is closely tied to the community. Let me tell you, we are a civic organization. We don't have particular sponsors which give us money on a regular basis. We're not a foundation. We're a civic organization. And when we only first got the tower 8 years ago, we were just we actually launched crowdfunding. We didn't even have the time horizon. We said, here's the tower, we really need money. And we've been able to collect like 70,000 rubles. That's about 1,000 euros. Without the community, we would not be able to get that money. And then we've been launching more waves of crowdfunding campaigns, but all of those were micro dimensions. And when we went into the public domain, when everybody noticed that we're doing these crowdfunding campaigns, more significant investors began giving their charity grants, more significant donations from companies, from businesses, even from people who were giving significant amounts of money. That's the community that supports us. And that's the foundation of our stability. We've been in very different financial states. We have volunteer projects, and it's not about our work. We all work in we all have different jobs, by the way, in addition to the tower. But we need to pay the bills, electricity, fire alarm, accounting. We needed money for that. And we found it, financial stability in that turbulence, with the Patreon platform. Patreon, thank you. And you can give donuts to our project. And if I may, please find us on Patreon and support our project, if you like it. But Patreon only helps us to actually cover costs, bare even. Something that Leona mentions: electricity, fire alarm, security, accounting. At least we know that the tower will be lit up tomorrow. Anything significant is happening thanks to grants or crowdfunding. Cool. Dear everybody, thank you so much. We will be wrapping up because we have even exceeded our planned time. Dear everyone, thank you so much for your presentations, for your opinions, for your discussion. That was very fruitful for urban practices. Now I believe that our audiences and those who will watch the recording of the talk, they will have some more hands-on ideas and tools to work in their cities, to work in their communities. And now they will know what kind of challenges they would have to overcome. The recording of this talk will be on the YouTube channel Architects RF and on the website of Strelka at the Urban Practices section. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.